The crystal glass in my Uncle Brian's hand caught the light from the chandelier. His voice boomed across the lakeside terrace of his massive home. And a toast to my niece, Sarah. I felt the shift, that familiar, heavy gaze of the whole family turning toward me. He pointed the glass right at me. A wide, performative smile on his face. Sarah reminds us all that, well, someone's got to do the charity work. Right. A few of my aunts and cousins chuckled. It was a wet, awkward sound. We're just glad you could make it. Sarah, he continued, even if you had to park that ancient car of yours all the way down the street. The humiliation was instant, public, clinical. That toast? That wasn't the beginning. The humiliation had started 20 minutes earlier. It began the moment I turned my 12-year-old sedan onto the long, winding driveway of Willow Creek Manor. That's what Uncle Brian called his house. A manor. It was less a home, more a monument to his success. 3 stories of glass and stone overlooking the lake. With a driveway already jammed with brand new BMWs, Range Rovers, and at least 3 Mercedes G-Wagons. And then there was my car. A reliable, faded blue sedan with 180,000 miles on the odometer. I felt that familiar, hot twist in my stomach. The one that always shows up right before a family event. It's the feeling of being the one-person skit they're all waiting to watch. I parked as far away as I could, down the street. Just as he'd said, I grabbed my simple clutch, not designer, just black, and checked my reflection in the car mirror. I was wearing a simple, elegant black dress. It was appropriate. It was understated. But to my family, understated is just another word for poor. I started the long walk up to the house. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses getting louder. Why was I even here? Because my cousin Kevin was getting engaged. And not showing up would cause even more drama than showing up. With my family, you always have to choose your poison. I thought about my bank account. The numbers I check every single morning. I live a simple life. I drive an old car. I live in a small, rented apartment. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because while Kevin was learning how to flip properties and Uncle Brian was mastering the art of the luxury upsell, I was earning my PhD, and that PhD left me with $250,000 in student loan debt. I'm 30 years old. I make a good living. But I've been pouring every spare cent into killing that debt. I want it to be free. I don't need a 3-story glass manor. I don't need a G-Wagon. I just need to be unburdened. But unburdened isn't a concept my family understands. In their world, you are what you own. You are the car you drive. The label on your watch. The square footage of your home. By their math, I was a 0. I took a deep breath as I reached the massive oak front doors. I could see them all through the glass. Mingling on the terrace. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all of them succeeding, all of them shining. I straightened my dress, pushed the door open, and stepped inside, ready to play my part. The family's charity case, the resident failure, the one they kept around to make themselves feel better. And as I stepped out onto that terrace, the music seemed to quiet down. The conversations paused, and Uncle Brian, champagne glass in hand, spotted me. His eyes lit up. The show was about to begin. I stepped further onto the terrace. Taking a glass of sparkling water from a waiter's tray, I avoided the champagne. I needed to keep my head clear. My cousin Kevin. the man of the hour. He gave me that little half smile, the one that's 90% pity and 10% thanks for making me look good. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list my publications. I wanted to talk about the advisory brief I just filed with the Pentagon. I wanted to ask Kevin if he understood the socio-economic implications of algorithmic bias in housing development loans. But I didn't. I just smiled back. It wouldn't matter. It's like there's an invisible wall between me and them. A thick, soundproof sheet of glass. I could stand here and shout about my work until my lungs gave out, and they wouldn't hear a single word. It's not even that they hate me. In some ways, that would be easier. No! They can't see me. My entire world, the complex ethics of artificial intelligence, the security protocols, the philosophical frameworks, it all exists in a dimension they can't comprehend. In their eyes, my work isn't real. It's not a car. It's not a stock portfolio. It's not a lakefront manor. It's just ideas. And ideas don't have a price tag you can brag about at an engagement party. And then there's Uncle Brian, the king of this tangible world. He's a brilliant car salesman. Genuinely, he could sell a 12-cylinder supercar to a man who lives in a one-bedroom apartment. And in his mind, that mastery of one thing makes him an expert in everything. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Live and in person. Wearing a ridiculously expensive watch. He is so profoundly, unconsciously incompetent in my field that he doesn't even know what he doesn't know. He just sees not selling physical objects, and his brain translates it to failure. All of this entire psychological breakdown, it flashed through my mind in the 2 seconds it took for him to lower his glass after the toast about my ancient car. But he wasn't done. The laughter had died down, but he was still holding the floor. He pointed that glass at me again. Enjoying the spotlight? No. But seriously, Sarah, he said, his voice dripping with that fake, condescending curiosity. What do you actually do at that institute of yours? Make sure the robots don't get sad. The laughter this time was louder, sharper. Kevin was grinning openly. My aunt, his mother, was hiding a smile behind her champagne flute. I just stood there. My face was hot. My hands were ice cold. This was it. This was the moment. The absolute bottom. I just wanted to evaporate. I looked down at my shoes. Just waiting for the ground to open up. Waiting for the moment to end. And that's when a new voice cut through the air. It was sharp. It was clear. And it was not amused. She's building the future. Brian, a future your entire business model won't even survive. Every head on that terrace snapped toward the voice, including mine. Standing at the edge of the lawn, looking completely unfazed by the sea of luxury cars and designer dresses, was Dr. Susan Hayes, my boss, the director of the National AI Research Institute. She was in her late 50s, wearing a charcoal gray suit that was probably worth more than my car, but it was tailored with such severe precision that it looked less like clothing and more like armor. Her expression was not angry. It was bored, like she'd just walked into a room of noisy children. My Uncle Brian, a man who prides himself on knowing everyone who matters in the city, looked completely lost. His confident smile faltered. Susan, he finally managed, clearly recognizing her from some city gala or fundraiser. He immediately tried to regain control, to make it seem like he was the one in charge. What a wonderful surprise! I didn't know you were on the guest list. I wasn't, Susan said, her voice flat. She didn't move. Brian, desperate to connect himself to this new obvious source of power, gestured toward me. And you know my niece, Sarah. Dr. Hayes's gaze landed on him. It was cold. Clinical. I know Dr. Sarah Thompson. She corrected. The word doctor hit the air and seemed to suck all the oxygen out of it. I saw my cousin Kevin's head physically jerk back. My aunt's hand, the one holding the champagne flute, I froze halfway to her mouth. Doctor, in all the years of family gatherings, in all the dismissive conversations about my little job or my perpetual schooling, not one of them had ever used that title. I'm not even sure they knew I had it. She's my lead security ethicist. Susan continued, her eyes still locked on Brian. Then, she dismissed him, turning her full attention to me as if we were the only two people there. Sarah, she said, and her tone softened, just a fraction. I apologize for interrupting your gathering, but the Secretary of Defense's office just called. If Doctor had silenced the crowd, Secretary of Defense turned them to stone. The Janus protocol has been activated. She said simply, we need you at the Institute. Now, I just nodded, my heart starting to pound. Janus. That was the big one. The protocol for a potential large-scale domestic cyber threat. I was already calculating. The drive was 40 minutes. I'd need to log in from the car. Get the initial sit-rep. Uncle Brian was still trying to process the words. Secretary of what he was scrambling. Trying to find his footing. Trying to find a way to put me back in the failure box his brain required. And like always, he reached for the only tool he had. Money. He let out a short, scoffing laugh. The Secretary of Defense. Sounds pretty important. He looked around at the other family members, trying to get them back on his side. I just hope they're finally paying you better than that $45,000 a year nonprofit salary. He grinned. Being proud of his recovery, he'd found my weak spot. He'd brought it all back to the numbers. He had no idea what he'd just done. Dr. Hayes turned her head. Just slightly. She looked at my Uncle Brian not with anger, but with a kind of mild, scientific curiosity. $45,000, she repeated, as if the number itself was a strange artifact she'd never seen before. Uncle Brian's confidence started to buckle. He could tell he'd made a mistake, but he didn't know what it was yet. Well, he stammered. Charity work, nonprofit, academia, those jobs. They don't exactly pay the big bucks. Brian, Dr. Hayes said, her voice patient. NARI is the National AI Research Institute. It's a federal organization, and it's where the entire country's defense and infrastructure strategy is being developed. We don't hire interns. We hire the most sought-after minds in the world. She paused, letting that sink in. Dr. Thompson, she continued, is one of the leading security ethicists on the planet. We spent 6 months recruiting her away from a research fellowship that Google was funding, and then she delivered the final, fatal blow. She looked right at my Uncle Brian, who was now frozen with a plastic smile on his face. Her starting salary, as a senior grade 4 scientist, Dr. Hayes said, in that same flat, informational tone, is $550,000 a year. The silence that fell over the terrace was absolute. It wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. The sound of the wind, the distant lake, the music, it all just vanished. Clink. Tinkle smash. My cousin Kevin's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the stone patio. It didn't even look down. He was just staring at me, his mouth slightly open. $550,000. I saw my aunt's hand tremble. I saw the blood drain from Uncle Brian's face. A looked old. That's... Kevin whispered. That's not... That's her base. Dr. Hayes added, as if an afterthought. It doesn't include her federal research grants or the performance bonuses we had to authorize to get her to sign. Honestly, she looked at me with a slight, wry smile. We are drastically underpaying her. It was over. In 30 seconds, my entire family's built by money worldview, the Porsches, the lake house. The developer deals had just been completely and totally annihilated. By me, the girl in the simple black dress and the 12-year-old car, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt... still. I watched them all scrambling, their brains trying to recalibrate 27 years of assumptions. The charity case was, by a staggering margin, the wealthiest person at the party, and they had no idea what to do with that information. Kevin's voice finally cut through the silence. It wasn't angry, just broken, confused. But... Sarah. He stammered, looking from me to my ancient sedan parked down the street. In the car, the tiny apartment, why? If you're making that, why would you live like that? This was the question. The one they couldn't answer. The one that broke their entire formula for reality. In their world, money equals things. A 5 minus 100 minus $1,000 salary equals a new Porsche, not a 12-year-old sedan. I finally looked away from Dr. Hayes and met his gaze. It's simple. Kevin, I said, my voice quiet. But it carried in the silence. That PhD wasn't free. I walked out of university with $250,000 in student loan debt. Another gasp. This, at least, was a number they understood. Debt. A failure they could comprehend. I've been living on almost nothing for 3 years. I continued. I've been paying it off. Aggressively. I live simply because I have a goal. And that debt was in the way. I could see Uncle Brian regrouping. He saw an opening, a goal. He scoffed. Trying to get his power back. What goal? To finally afford a car from this decade? I almost smiled. He still didn't get it. He was still trying to use money as a weapon, not realizing he was completely disarmed. No. Uncle Brian, I said, my goal isn't something I can buy at one of your dealerships. Dr. Hayes stepped forward slightly, a proud smile on her face. She's being modest. Again, Sarah is spending her free time, what little she has of it, building an open-source AI platform. It's designed to help nonprofits predict natural disasters and combat global disinformation campaigns. I looked right at my uncle, the man who had built his entire identity on the shiny things he owned. You see, Uncle Brian, I've realized there are 2 kinds of legacies in this world. I watched his face as I spoke. He was finally, truly, listening. There's your kind. A legacy of acquisition. It's all about what you can have, how many cars you can sell, how big your house on the lake is, how much money you can stack up in an account. It's a legacy of mine. And then, I said, feeling the last bit of fear I ever had of him just evaporate. Then there's my kind, a legacy of impact. It's about what you can create for other people. It's about building something that might actually help someone, something that might outlast you. I held his gaze. He didn't look away. He couldn't. You can keep your legacy. Uncle Brian, I'll choose mine. That last sentence hung in the air. I'll choose mine. Doctor? Hayes put a hand on my shoulder. Sarah? We need to go. The secretary is waiting. I know. I said. I turned away from my family, who were still frozen. Statues of wealth and confusion. As Dr. Hayes and I began walking across the lawn, the silence behind us finally broke. It wasn't a shout. It was a disintegration. I heard my aunt whisper my cousin's name, Kevin. In a sharp, panicked tone, I heard the clink of a glass being set down too hard. The party music, which had been playing softly, suddenly felt loud and offensive, and someone quickly turned it off. The entire, elaborate, expensive facade of the afternoon had just crumbled into a pile of awkward, silent humiliation. I didn't look back. I just walked side by side with Dr. Hayes toward the parking area. Sarah. Wait. It was Uncle Brian. His voice hoarse. Desperate. He was half jogging to catch up, his expensive suit jacket flapping. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. Not fully. Doctor. Hayes stopped with me. Sarah, he said, breathing hard. He wasn't the patriarch anymore. He was just a flustered, older man. I had no idea. $500,000? I mean, that's incredible. We just thought you were struggling. I finally turned to look at him. His face was pale. His eyes begging for it. For what? For me to make it okay for him. For me to say, it's fine. That's the problem. Uncle Brian, I said, and my voice was cold. Colder than I'd ever heard it. You thought struggling was the only other option besides this? I gestured to his mansion. But the money... He grasped. The money just changes everything. Doesn't it? I looked at this man who had measured my entire life's worth in dollars. And I gave him the final, honest truth. It never was about the money. You just can't see anything else. I turned and got into my 12-year-old sedan. I buckled my seatbelt. The engine turned over with its familiar, reliable hum. I pulled out onto the long driveway, driving past the Porsches and the Range Rovers. I didn't look in my rearview mirror. As I drove, my phone, which had been silent, buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a text from Kevin. I glanced at it. Just 5 words. I'm proud of you, Sarah. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. A single crack in the wall. Maybe a start. But as I turned onto the main highway, my mind was already shifting. The family drama, the toasts, the money, the shock. It was all fading, shrinking in my mind. It felt small. It felt over. My focus was narrowing, sharpening, gaining the clarity of my professional life, the Janus Protocol, a national security threat, a complex ethical model I needed to build and run before the end of the day. The real work was waiting. Voiceover success isn't what other people see. It's not the car, or the house, or the champagne toast. It's the work you do when no one is watching. We all have to choose what kind of legacy we want to build, So let me know in the comments, have you ever had to choose between a legacy of acquisition, what you can own, and a legacy of impact, what you can create? I'd love to hear your story. And be sure to follow for more as we explore what real success actually looks like.